I sit with the Director of Presidential Initiatives in Agriculture and Agribusiness, Dr. Peter Boamah Otokunor. There's a lot to talk about in the agri sector, particularly cocoa, because a few weeks ago, the Finance Minister, Dr. Singh, announced a raft of reforms to address the liquidity challenges of Cocobod. And one of them was the producer price adjustment. The farmers are not happy because the government has reduced the cocoa producer price by some 28%. The minority members say they will stop at nothing to ensure that the government reverses this plan. Dr. Peter Boamah Otokunor, welcome to JoyNews. Thank you so much for having me too. Let's start with cocoa. You were at the farms, the cocoa farms, some few days ago. How are they doing?
Well, the cocoa farms are doing well. The cocoa farmers are also upbeat and hopeful about the future. They are optimistic and they remain inspired to do more for the cocoa sector. And so the past few weeks, we have been engaging the cocoa farmers in the cocoa growing areas, trying to share with them the vision of His Excellency, the President, the plans he has for them, and how he wants to reform the cocoa sector, part of which has brought the conversation about the producer pricing. Indeed, the producer pricing is very key for the farmers because for the farmers, the money they get from cocoa is their livelihood,
their income,
and that is what they do. They do nothing else. They just grow cocoa, and so even though the income comes in seasonally, that's what they use to do everything. And so it is important as government to always put measures in place to secure the cocoa farmers' income. And that is why anytime you hear anybody talks about cocoa, they talk about the cocoa farmers' income. But that is not the only challenge that confronts the cocoa farm.
But they're not happy. I'm sure when you went to the farms, you got that sentiment that they're not happy that government has had to reduce the farmgate prices from over 3,000 to 2,000.
Nobody would be happy if you go to the market and you are trading a commodity and it appears as if the price of the commodity has fallen. It means that grossly your revenues will be coming down. So nobody likes that. Nobody wants lower revenues, right? But it is also important to put it into perspective. The pricing, the commodity cocoa is not consumed in Ghana. And even though government sets the producer price, government does not set the market price. The product is sold on the international market. And on the international market, any cocoa growing country that brings cocoa there sells the cocoa at a particular price. And so even though government makes decisions on which pricing regime or which price to sell cocoa or to buy cocoa from the farmers, the price is a factor of the international price. And so no single government can sit down and say, okay, this is the price that we want to buy cocoa from the farmers without, taking into consideration the price on the international market.
But you also, government sets the FOB price.
No, government doesn't set the FOB price. The FOB price is set on the market, international cocoa exchange. And like any other pricing regime, it's a factor of demand and supply. And so for those who demand the beans, we supply the beans. We do not consume the beans here. And so for the huge multinationals that demand the beans on the international market and the availability of the beans from the producers is what determines the price. And so like any other pricing of any other product, demand and supply plays a key. And so on the international cocoa exchange, which we call the ICE, that is where the price is determined. And so your business newsroom would always announce that today cocoa is trading at this per ton. Cocoa is trading at that per ton. And it is determined daily, depending on what happens on the international market. Now, government then would have to pick that value, and at certain points in time, let's say maybe the beginning of the season, or maybe in the middle of the season, look at the pricing regime and see whether government is trading reasonably and making reasonable revenue which could take care of the farmers, then set the price at that regime. But what has happened in the past 8 years is that the cocoa pricing regime has been rather slow in growth. And so you would realize that in 2017 to 2020, not a single cedi was added to the farmers' producer price. From 2020, it started going up. Now, what was happening on the international market was that within this period, there had been a steady growth of the cocoa price on the international market to a point where it peaked at even $12,000 per ton, $12,000 per ton. And so what government ordinarily would have done is to calculate a percentage which could be set as a baseline or which could be determined by the comfort of the government. And so in time past, government have been fluctuating that decision based on their comfort and the comfort of the fiscal regime. Then they decide on which portion they give to the cocoa farmer. And it will surprise you that between 2017 to 2024, the highest the government gave to the cocoa farmer is 30% of the FOB price. 30% of the FOB price. Now, that was our bone of contention. That was our worry. Because in the run-up to the 2024 elections, the engagement we had with the cocoa farmers, they told us that the pricing regime or the producer price the government was giving them was inadequate. And it was making them uncompetitive.
So you promised 70% of the FOB
yes,
price?
They were not able to produce enough. And so yields were low. They were not able to supply enough. So then we had to promise that 70% because we had done it before. When we were in government, we were doing 70%.
But even when you set the FOB price, you said you're going to give 70%.
When we set the producer price?
Yes.
As 70% of the
FOB price. Now the finance minister announced 90%. Even with the 90%, we are seeing the reduction.
Okay, so what happened simply was that in 2025, we needed to live up to the promise we made to the people. And we needed to be fair and true to the cocoa farmer. So we announced 70% of the FOB price. At the time, it was selling for $7,200. Nobody thought that the price would come down significantly, regressively, in that manner. But it happened. And so we had to look at how to manage the situation. So that first of all, we are able to pay the cocoa farmers we have picked their beans at the previous price. And also to buy the outstanding cocoa beans that is lodged with the farmers because they were crying. They have harvested their beans. They need somebody to buy. And you needed to buy. But when you go and buy at the old price, it's like buying $7,200 per ton cocoa and going to the market to sell it at $4,200. Nobody trades and loses like that. But you would realize that our total estimation for this year, last year and this year's season, was 650,000 metric tons. But at the previous price, which was set in 4th October, we had bought about 581,000 metric tons of that target. And so that meant that whilst we have bought the cocoa at 7,200 per ton for 581,000, we have had to go and sell that below that price. And the interesting thing is that the very day we set that price, within 2 weeks, the price started dropping. In fact, within 30 days, the price had dropped from 7,200 to 5,800. And so what it means is that all the cocoa that we bought within October, when we go to the market to sell them, we would be losing over $3,000 per ton. And that meant that the government would be losing about $2 billion in all for the cocoa that we had purchased. And so we couldn't sell all the cocoa because when you go and sell, you've made losses. We had to pay the rollover contract of about 333,000 metric tons. And that agreement was signed at $2,600. And so you are buying the cocoa at $7,200 from the cocoa farmer per ton. Then you go and use it to pay a $2,600 per ton. You can imagine the loss. And so when you do the estimations, we are losing almost about $941 million from that trade alone. And so we paid some, about 240,000 metric tons were used to take care of the rollover. Then we sold some on the international market. And you would see that from data from 2017 till 2025, 2025 is the year that we have had the highest revenue from cocoa. Yet we didn't do any forward contract. Yet the price was dropping. And so cocoa brought in $3.9 billion US with the small amount of cocoa that we sold. The rollover contract was not inclusive, just the small amount. Then some portions we were not able to sell. And so then it became difficult to pay the LBCs their $750 million, debt. And so because you are unable to pay them, they are unable to pay the farmers. So there are a lot of farmers from November that sold their cocoa beans through the LBCs. They took chits and they had not been paid.
Right.
And so that crisis now led us to now fix the reforms, because then if you have that amount of money to pay and you don't have the money, and the price is also dropping, and you are absorbing over $2 billion from that trade, then it meant that you needed to take a very difficult decision to adjust the price so that you can cut the losses. You understand?
I mean,
so government still absorbs some, but they cut the losses so that we would be able to trade the outstanding beans from the market and also be able to trade in the next season.
You've explained, but for the cocoa farmer who wakes up every morning and tends to the farm and ensure that we have the beans, he doesn't care about all these economics that go into the cocoa. What he's talking about is, at the end of the day, the government has reduced the price, the farmgate price, and that is unfair. Don't you agree?
Unfortunately, the cocoa farmer must care. And the issue of fairness will not even come in, because you and I agree to the facts. And you are saying the ordinary cocoa farmer wouldn't understand. But it is fair. Do you understand? But the fact that he doesn't understand doesn't make it unfair. You, with all the explanations I've given you, you would agree with me that government has been exceedingly fair. You are even worried that we are paying 90% of the FOB price. Is that not so? And that is fairness. But the cocoa farmer not understanding is another matter. And that is why we have had to go down to the cocoa farmer.
So are you saying they now understand
the issues and break it down so that now they would appreciate the reason why government is taking those steps? And there is a thing about policies. Public policies are made for the people, and it is important that you carry the people along. And so it was important that we share with the people as much as possible to the barest minimum for them to understand where we are with the cocoa sector and how government intends to use the reforms to strengthen and build a better and a more prosperous cocoa sector for the farmer. And so that is what we are supposed to do. And perhaps that's what media is supposed to do. Media is not supposed to relax on the discomfort, the misunderstanding, the lack of understanding of the farmer and say, okay, the farmer doesn't understand, so why did you take that decision? Or the farmer doesn't care, he just needs his money. The farmer must care, because the money that goes to the farmer is not from space.
So
the money that goes to the farmer,
from our conversation so far, if you allow me, from our conversation, I'll let you.
So that the farmer will understand that
you
the money that
to the farmers. You went to the farms.
It's not from space. It's from what is sold on the international market. A portion of it, or a fraction of it, is what comes to them. And for that matter, if that market is no more, there is no cocoa trade. Do you understand?
I get the point. And I'm sure when you visited the farms, you were able to explain to the farmers what is happening with Cocobod and why you have had to take that decision. When you interacted with some of the farmers, they also mentioned that you explained about the world market price. You also talked about the mismanagement of the previous government. I remember one of the chiefs of Woman No Good said to you,
I like the name of that village.
He said to you that,
I don't know what happened there before they gave that name.
We'll talk about that later. But he said to you that if you are blaming anyone for mismanagement, these people should be prosecuted. They shouldn't bear the brunt of the mismanagement of the previous government. Have you started investigations that will possibly lead to prosecution if you so believe that some members of the previous government did wrong?
The Attorney General is doing a very great job with the investigations, I can assure you. Just yesterday I had a conversation with the Deputy Attorney General, and he told me that they are working feverishly. The President has directed them on that. Cabinet has taken a decision. They've moved in very aggressively, and they are doing that investigation. And I agree with the Chief, who said that they must be prosecuted. Indeed, such levels of crimes are crimes against humanity and must not be left to stand.
But
and
until you've finished the investigation, can you boldly say that they mismanaged Cocobod?
Oh, yes.
When you don't have any evidence?
Oh, yes.
Do you have now?
Say that. But the evidence is available. If you don't have evidence, what are you investigating? Most of the decisions are criminal, and they smack of criminal maladministration of Cocobod, and it's most worrying. For example, if you look at the issue of cocoa sacks, Cocobod bought cocoa sacks that could last for 6 years, stored them in the warehouse, brought them to Ghana, stored them in the warehouse, and subsequently, every other year after they made that purchase, they imported cocoa sacks, huge amounts of cocoa sacks, and left them at the port without clearing them because the duties were also they were not able to pay. So in 2022 they imported cocoa sacks, they didn't clear them, and it's at the port. 2023 they imported same, and it's at the port. 2024 they imported same, and it's at the port. And just four days to the elections of 2024, they issued another contract worth $48 million to import another batch of the sacks. Meanwhile, the 2021 sacks are the sacks that we have used throughout the period, and we used some last year since we came into power, and we are going to use some this year. Who does that to his country of birth? Who causes this kind of mess? And you think this is not criminal? So
you have strong evidence to take them to court?
But the evidence is what I'm saying. The figures are there.
But why haven't you started the court processes yet?
The wheels of justice grinds very slowly, but certainly it gets there. And so there are a number of them, a number of issues, a number of criminal issues. For example, every year the government budgets what we call cocoa rehabilitation. So most of the cocoa plants have stayed long, and so they yield less. Some of them are suffering from swollen shoot disease, so you have to cut them and plant new cocoa trees. This is a program that we have done to sustain the productivity levels of our cocoa. In 2015-2016, we did rehabilitation with about 20 million seedlings. That gave us the 1 million metric tons of cocoa production in 2021. And that was the highest revenue we got throughout the last 9 years. And that was about $2 billion from cocoa when we got the 1 million metric tons. Subsequently, it's been dipping. The problem has been the agronomic contribution, the agronomic effort that government provides for the farmer to improve their productivity. No free fertilizer, no agrochemicals are provided, and the kind of support that is given to the farmer has all been non-existent in the last 8 years. It existed before, you understand? And so it brought the yields down, it brought the performance of the trees down, and so there was a need for rehabilitation of the plants, and they went for $350 million loan to come and do the rehabilitation of about 156,000 hectares of the cocoa farms. And guess what? The money was spent, consumed completely, and an additional amount of 700 million Ghana cedi from Cocobod accounts was also used on that same project. And guess what? They didn't even do 40,000 hectares of those rehabilitations. This is a problem. This is criminal. It's a criminal maladministration of Cocobod. And there's many others which the Attorney General will uncover are the reasons why Cocobod is currently owing 32.9 billion. Guess what?
Is this from the audited accounts? Is this from the audited accounts?
It's under audit, but these are the account statements of Cocobod. These are the account statements, but it's under audit. Okay. And so the processes are going on. There are queries that have been raised here and there. But the total debt portfolio as it stands now is 32.9 billion. And if you look at the unaudited balance sheet, you would realize that when you saw the assets of Cocobod, everything, including their chairs, their cars, their offices, cocoa hospital, cocoa clinic, and all those things, and you look at the debt they are owing, Cocobod will still be running deficits of about 3.9 billion Ghana cedi. That's how bad. If Cocobod was any institution or any organization or any asset that is being sold on the market, nobody would buy. It has completely collapsed. It's bankrupt. And so it is the bankruptcy that is the problem. The criminal acts are different matters that must be dealt with. But those criminal acts led to the bankruptcy. And because of the bankruptcy, government is not able to absorb as much as it would have loved to.
What happened to the Cocoa Stabilization Fund?
It was closed down by the previous government. The Cocoa Stabilization Fund was set up by the previous President Mahama's administration, so that we would use that to cushion the price fluctuations, if there is any. Our friends came, then they scrapped that, fund. And just like most of the stabilization funds that were created under the President Mahama administration, most of them were utilized for other things. And so there's no stability now for Cocobod. Cocobod is owing debts that it must pay. Cocoa bills under the DDEP were rescheduled to 2025. And when we inherited government, we needed to pay those amounts. Yet, you have $32.9 billion debt already sitting. Then you have to go and pay those obligations. Last year, we paid some $4 billion. This year, we are going to pay those cocoa bills, and we'll continue paying. And so, these are unplanned, financial burden that already the government is absorbing. Then you have that coupled with the reduction, the grand slump in the global prices for cocoa, which makes it very difficult to cushion. But as I said, even with this, in the face of all these difficulties, the government has cushioned about $2 billion in the past, few months.
So I get two challenges from you: the world market price being one factor, and then the issues of mismanagement of the previous government,
which led to the debt, and which debt obligation we had to respond to. And for that matter, we are unable to offload more money to cushion the farmer.
Back to the farmer, have you paid the arrears? Because in Parliament on Thursday, which is today, the minority in charge, or the ranking member, Isaac Yaopoku, talked about that the farmers haven't received the money that you promised or you said you had released. Have you paid the arrears?
So, two things. Because of the crisis and the fact that we have had to reduce the price, the producer price, the president directed the finance minister to raise money beyond the books of Cocobod to pay the $750 million debt owed to the LBCs. And this is the process for the cocoa trading. There are LBCs, licensed cocoa buyers, who go and buy the cocoa from the farmers, sometimes with debt raised from the banks, and sometimes they credit from the farmers. And so when Cocobod pays them, then they go back and pay the farmers. Now, this debt was to the tune of about $750 million US, and that comes to about 7.5 to 8 billion Ghana cedi. Now, the last 2 weeks after the announcement, when the president directed that we should raise money for them, about 4 billion Ghana cedi have been released to the LBCs. In fact, last 3 days, I spoke to the president of the Licensed Cocoa Buyers Association, and he told me that they have received the monies and they've started disbursing the monies. And the process is still on. As we speak today, the value of the payment could even change, because as at yesterday, they were still processing the payments. And we are hopeful that in the next 2-3 weeks, we will be able to absorb all those outstanding debts owed to the farmers. Then the rest of the season, the LBCs can use their margins to buy at the 2000.
So if the minority is saying that the cocoa farmers have not received the monies, government is not to blame because you've already disbursed the monies to the LBCs. Is that what you're saying?
Government has done the payments to most of the LBCs, not all of them. And remember, when the money hits their accounts, they have a long process of, it's a very complex process of disbursing to the various communities.
How complex is it?
The cocoa farmers are not sitting in one room like my office here, and you just go and give them the money. They are scattered across the country. And there is what we call the cocoa districts. The LBCs must now determine how much is going to every cocoa district. Then when the money gets to the cocoa district, it goes to their purchasing clerks, which purchasing clerks will now have to identify all those individuals that they have to pay. And so it takes time. And so whilst on the field, between Sunday and Monday, some of the cocoa farmers admitted that they have started receiving their payments. And so it will continue. But it's not everybody who is going to get at a go. But so far as the money is going, it means that the process of payments would have begun, and the farmers would get their payments in due course.
The minority members went to the cocoa farms in the eastern region on Monday. I think you were also on the farm on Monday.
On Tuesday.
On
They
Tuesday.
abandoned the by-election and went to the farm. And I told you the other time they had given up on the by-election, so they decided.
Yes, and they say
unfortunately, it didn't go well for them too.
Right.
The farmers gave it to them.
They say that they will stop at nothing to ensure that at least you go back to the previous cocoa producer price.
They should have stopped at nothing when they were in power to give the cocoa a better producer price. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been in this problem. In fact, they should have stopped at nothing.
But they never reduced the prices. You did.
They should have stopped at nothing in managing Cocobod. In fact, managing Cocobod very well so that their finances would have been good. If they had done that, the cocoa farmers would have been very grateful to them. What they are doing now is an exercise in futility. Indeed, they are insulting the sensibilities of the cocoa.
I mean, the farmers, the cocoa farmers are crying.
And you have seen,
to them.
You have seen some of the sound bites of the cocoa farmers when they visited them. In fact, they feel deeply insulted that is the MPP that is now coming to tell them their welfare and whether they are happy or they are not happy. Particularly when they saw what they did when they were in government.
I also saw videos where they were not happy about the decision that you had taken.
Nobody, as I said, when we started, nobody would be happy when there would have to be a reduction in revenue.
But don't you think this is going to hurt you politically? This is unprecedented.
It
has never happened before.
Absolutely. It has happened before. It has happened before because on the international market, the price has come down.
It's exactly, but this is the first time you are hearing the farmgate prices have been reduced.
The reason why farmgate prices have never been reduced is that no government has ever paid the right price to the farmer than John Mahama. When you pay 70% to the farmer and the price drops below 30%, it means that you would have to go down. Do you understand? It's simple mathematics. The money I'm collecting, I'm giving you 70%. If the price drops beyond 30%, it means that I've gone beyond what I'm giving you. Is that also simple mathematics? Just common sense. That's why you don't need any math teacher to teach you. You understand? If I'm giving you 30% of the value and it drops by 50%, I can still give you the 30% and you will not complain. It's a simple common sense logic. You understand? But now I'm giving you 70% of the money. So when it drops below 30% or beyond 30%, it means that you are falling below the 70. So the price will come down. But when he was giving you 30%, when it comes down to 50%, 60%, even 70%, price drop. He doesn't need to drop the price. You understand? And so would you rather want that? And that is what has caused us to even do the analysis and be more real and be more scientific. In economics, there's something we call, you may want to allow me to finish this one. It's very important. It answers your question. There's something called purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity tells you the real wealth of the amount of money that you are earning. And so you were giving the cocoa farmer 3,100 per bag. At the time, the fertilizer, which is a key input of the farm, was being sold at 700 Ghana cedi. And so if he's going to use the 1 bag to buy fertilizer, he can buy only about 4 bags from that amount. Now the same fertilizer is 350 Ghana cedis. If he's going to use the 2,587 to buy the fertilizer, he's buying almost about 7 bags to 8 bags of the fertilizer. There is this agrochemicals they use. They call it glyphosate. Condemn. A dozen was selling for 960 Ghana cedi. So when they were taking 3,100, how many glyphosates were they going to buy with that 3,100? They could only buy about 3 dozens, 3 cartons. Now the same glyphosate is 420 Ghana, and with 2,500, they are buying about 7 of those cartons. And so that is, you see, sometimes we think that the farmers are not intelligent and they cannot really analyze the issues. And that's why it has caused some of the farmers to come out and say, look, we know the difference in what we are feeling now. We use our motor blow to spray our farms, and we buy petrol. And we are buying a liter at 20 cedis. Today we are buying a liter at 11 cedis. And so even though the price has come down and we are uncomfortable, just as everybody would be, we are better off than the amount that you were giving us. So don't come and insult our sensibilities. And that's what the farmers are saying.
So Cocobod announced pay cuts for management and senior staff. 20% for management and then
10% for
senior staff. And even for board members, the allowances were cut as well. How much are you hoping to get from that?
Well, I have not done that. I don't have the figures, and I have not done those estimations. But what I know is that there is some cut in their expenditure.
People say it's a populist approach.
A cut in their disposable income, and I think it's a very important, decision made by Cocobod, because Cocobod is a management of the cocoa sector, and the farmer is the producer of the cocoa, which is sold on the international market. What Cocobod does is to provide agronomic support to the farmer and regulate the trading of the cocoa. And so if the farmer is suffering a price cut, then it just makes sense that the management or those who manage the process also suffer, a cut. And I think that was a smart decision.
Right. Let's move to other sectors of agric. And recently, some traders, tomato traders, went to Burkina Faso. Unfortunately, we lost about 7 of them because of a terrorist attack. And the question that I asked the deputy agric minister was that, why are we going to Burkina Faso to trade or to buy tomatoes when we have the soil?
Okay, so we produce a lot of tomatoes here, but tomato is a perishable crop and it doesn't go beyond its period. But unfortunately, the tomato we produce are rain-fed. They are not irrigation fed. And so because they are not irrigation fed, you are not able to run it, you are not able to produce throughout the year. And so when you are off season, then you have shortages and you have to go and buy from outside. And that's what government has been trying to cure. And so over the period, government has not invested much into irrigation facilities that could help us produce tomatoes throughout the year. And that is what this government is focusing on, in bridging that gap, so that we invest more in producing the tomatoes that we consume off season, so that we can even process, some of the tomatoes. And so you would realize that when we are in season, there are always tomato gluts. And last year, we produced excess within season, but we couldn't move it beyond the season. And there was no processing plants. And so what we are left to do as a country to cure the fundamental challenge that has to do with tomatoes, and in Ghana, every single household, every single food table consume tomato from Monday to Sunday. You understand? And so we consume it a lot. And so the gap to fill is the irrigation. And so we are targeting building producing about 300,000 metric tons of additional, tomato within the dry season. And in my office, under one of the initiatives that we are doing called the Dubidi Initiative, together with some private sector, we are targeting growing some significant portions of tomato, except that some of which also is for exports.
When are you starting now? Have you started that?
No, it's a project this season. We are doing that this season. We are doing that.
And that starts in which month?
They have been producing. The season starts somewhere in April when the rains comes in. Okay. Because some of them you don't have the irrigation systems in place and all that.
Oh, so what are the plans for irrigation? The system.
So under the Irrigation for Wealth program being run by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, we are looking at expanding. In fact, in the medium term, our target is to double the irrigable areas, the irrigable land in the country. But in the next 1 year, 2 years, there are projects that some are being funded by some 150 million euros from the Italian government, and I think one other investment from I've missed the country, but all going into irrigation so that we can expand irrigation infrastructure. I believe that if we are able to secure extensive irrigation space for tomato production, that is when we'll be able to cure the challenges.
And when is that going to happen? Because as you prepare and put all the measures in place, the traders will still be going to Burkina Faso.
Okay, so the thing about irrigation is that it's not like something that is sold on the market like the tomato you are talking about and you go and buy. It is infrastructure that requires time to construct. You don't even construct those things within 6 months, unless maybe you are doing underground borehole powered by solar, which most of which is being done on a small scale for individuals. Some are funding it individually and all that. But irrigation infrastructure takes time to build, and so you would be adding on. It's incremental. You'll be adding on as much as you are able to do some, and you cultivate. Then it helps in the expansion of the production.
is the Director of Presidential Initiatives in Agriculture and Agribusiness. And my name is Gemma Appiah. Thank you for watching.